99% of men, they don't know who they are as a sexual being.
There's this masculinity piece that disconnects men from their feeling capacity, directly impacting their ability to hold the energy of passion in their relationship.
In Tantra, we call that a disconnect with their feminine side. So then we cannot fully communicate the way we want to with our partner. Do things against your own will that you don't really want, but you just do it because other people told you that is the right way of having a relationship. Eventually, you're not going to feel good about yourself.
Why men feel so distant from their own wisdom, so distant from their own intuition.
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this.
Welcome back to another episode of The Authentic Man. I'm your host, David Chambers. I'm a men's dating, relationship, and intimacy coach, guiding men to deeper experience of themselves and the relationships they're in. And today's episode, I'm joined by a wonderful guest, a man who I've followed on and off across social media for a little while. Steffo Shambo, and he is, he runs a Tantric academy, and he really takes men through a practice and process of deepening their relationships, igniting their life force energy, and coming into, bountiful lives, whether that's money, whether that's sex in their marriages, and kind of attraction, so they can really live the life they really want to. And we really dive into one of those things, really talking about how we can reignite the passion in your relationship, because this is something that a lot of men really struggle with. A lot of couples do. It's one of the most common things I see in couples that I talk to is that they're, in a relationship and there's no sex, or the sex isn't very good, or, all these sorts of things. So really dive into what a man needs to do, how he needs to show up to reignite that, why that happens, what are the reasons that kind of start to distinguish. And then we go on a bit of a winding journey, as we do in my conversations, and we talk about, tantric masculine leadership as well, like what that looks like, how that's different from the sort of leadership we're used to seeing, the sort of leaders we're really looking for in the world to take men forward. There's a lot of leaders in various spheres that are not taking men forward. They're kind of exploiting men. So we talk about the attributes of a man that we need from the leaders to kind of show men forward as well. And we talk about the age-old topic that I see asked of me a lot, which is, how can we get our partner to do the work? And we have some controversial answers to that question. So yeah, if you're listening to this, I hope you enjoy the episode. If, again, I say, and I don't often say this actually, is, if you enjoyed the episode or you've been enjoying this podcast for a long time, I really appreciate if you were to just go over to Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to the podcast and just leave a review, leave some stars, because it makes a difference, because it allows more people to see it, and more people to, hear from these wonderful guests, these wonderful men and women that I have on the podcast, and learn from them, and learn get the value that you also get as well. And this is going out, my program that I'm running for avoidant men. This is the last weekend we had to sign up for, because it starts on the 17th of September. So if you're interested, it's really helping men who are avoidant of love and relationships to step into a way in which they can create the beautiful relationship they want. You'll be given the tools and the practices and the advice directly from me. It's a live program that runs for 12 weeks from the 17th of September. So if it's something that you are tempted by, please just get in touch. I've only got a couple more spots, so get in touch quickly. Right, I'll let you jump into the episode. Hello, Steffo. How are you doing today?
Blessed and grateful. Good to be here with you, David.
Yeah, wonderful. You're a man who's come across your path a few times through, the wonderful world of social media and so forth, and bringing this tantric way of being to men and helping them in their relationships and their intimacy and their sex lives and their drive for life, their life force for life is such an important aspect, because what I think we see a lot out in social media, especially, is there's a lot of women talking about the tantric way of being, and they make that look super seductive and sexy. And sometimes I find when we talk to men about tantra, they're not really sure what their place is and what it can kind of add to their lives. But today I'd love to talk about how we can bring some of those tantric elements, those tantric ways of being, into our relationships, especially when our relationships are, maybe we've lost a bit of passion. I'm sure it's something you see a lot in your work, is men in their relationships, and maybe they've been in for a couple of years of marriage or whatever it is. Maybe they've had children, and they're crying out, and they're saying, that all the passion is gone, it's disappeared, it's extinguished, and they're not sure why it's happened. And maybe they're pointing the finger in the wrong place even. So I thought I'd start with the question of, what's your experience when it comes to working with men are the kind of reasons why, and the reasons and causes why this kind of passion disappears in relationships?
Yeah, it's a great question. And before answering that, you touched on something very important there in the beginning, which is that, there's a lot of tantric empowerment for women out there, and that's great. And there's a lot of opportunities for women to empower themselves in their sexuality and sensuality and step into their femininity, but not so much for the men. And what is it even to step into your masculinity now with the Manosphere? And, is Tantra just about sex? So it's a great question. So the second question there, what I see in my work again and again, and this might also be a frequency or a resonance, right? What you attract. But what I see again and again is that there has been, an underlying elephant in the room going on for a long time. So small things just keep being added on, like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Finally, it just break. So what I see it is, one is a lack of communicating about your desires, sexual preferences, and emotions, because they all tie together, right? It's really hard to express your deep lust and desires and boundaries if you're not connected to your emotions, right? Another is just men start taking their relationship and their life and their wife and kids for granted. And they're just like, okay, this is just what my life is now, and I'm dropping the ball. I'm not taking responsibility anymore. I stopped dating my wife. And it's almost like these men just start to go on an autopilot in life, basically. So usually it's their woman that is like hitting them with a hammer of truth and be like, out of the blue. The men feel it's out of the blue. For women, they've been suffering for years, right? Or months, for a long time. And the men are just oblivious about it. They don't know. It's like, oh, I guess it's fine, So that's what I'm seeing and again. It's that elephant in the room that is unaddressed, haven't been spoken about, right? So, if you don't speak about that, and if you don't do the small gestures anymore, if you don't date your partner anymore, if you take them for granted, of course you're not going to have a great sex life. Of course the spark will dwindle and disappear, right? So that's what I'm seeing in my clients. Is it that with every single man in the world? Probably not. But at least for the last 8 years of the clients that come to me, that's the gist of it.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned kind of masculinity in the manosphere. It's almost like this plays into this version of masculinity that a lot of us have been taught as men, right? That to, not express our emotions, to be emotionally shut down, all these things seems to actually play kind of directly into this, and also this kind of idea of, and I see this a lot with men, I wonder if it's something you see, is they chase the prize, and the prize being the relationship or the marriage. And then once they have it, it's almost as if that thing has been banked and they don't have to do any maintenance, and that they start putting their eyes onto the next thing, which is like a bigger promotion or a bigger house and so forth. And I guess it alludes to what you were saying about kind of dropping the ball. But there's this kind of masculinity piece, this masculinity a lot of us grew up with, that kind of disconnects men from their feeling capacity, from their emotional body, that then really is directly impacting their ability to kind of hold the energy of passion in their relationship.
Yeah, 100%. In Tantra, we call that a disconnect with their feminine side, the feminine energy, right? So we divide it into left side being feminine and the right side being masculine, and we all have left and right side, and what we try to operate or get into, operate from the middle, which is the central channel, Sushumna Nadi in yogic language, right? And this is our core, our power. And to get into our middle, we need to have a balance between left and right. Otherwise, we cannot get into that center that we want, right? So it's not enough just to chase success and trying to fill our bucket of happiness with external things like, okay, I'm gonna get the wife, I'm gonna get, the house, the kids, and the money and all of that, and that will make me happy. And sure, it's great that you have success in your life, you feel accomplished and driven and purposeful as a man, but like you said, we need to also balance that with the feminine, the emotional side, right? That we are able to connect to that and express that, and then we can rest in the middle.
Yeah. And you mentioned there kind of this Sushumna Nadi, and I think in martial arts it's kind of seen as the central column, or even the Dantian, these sorts of regions in the body. It's like a physical piece. So are you saying that to cultivate this greater feminine capacity, this left side, there's actually there's an aspect of it that's like a physical cultivation, a physical activity in there?
Well, it's all superimposed. Like the physical body is, inside of the energetic structure in yogic terms and in tantric technology, right? The energy body is kind of superimposed and lying 5 to 10 centimeters outside of the physical body. So everything that happens in the energetical body will influence the physical body. We heard about the mind-body connection, right? And disease happening first in maybe the mind. If you're always thinking about a negative thought, it might manifest as a sickness in the body. That connection is real. It's not just studied enough, right? So yes, what happens in the body, you could go through the body and develop your body and be more masculine that way, but there's also a frequency and a quality of energy in the energetic body, the pranic body, basically. So we can work with it on multiple levels to have the best effect. We can work with it. We can do energy work, emotional work, mental work, physical work, all that, and combine it together.
Got it. So there's a mindset also there that's creating this kind of disconnect in the relationship of just dwindling and the extinguishing the passion. And what sort of mindset do you see that men are having that's creating this kind of leakage of passion out of their relationship, about themselves or about their partners?
It's lingering stuff from old days. There's so much. We all are different depending on our upbringing, right? So we will be depending on what country we grew up in, what culture, what religion. But what I see is, some religions have, you grew up in different religions that are actually saying that sex is a sin, or it's dirty, or it's wrong before a certain time, and things like that. So we might grow up and hear those things, and it will be back in our mind. So we might feel shame about our sexuality, and we never worked with that, and we never saw that pattern in the subconscious, for example. Or we grew up, like many of us have in the Western world, grew up and in school, and friends around us said, men should not cry. You should, that's being a girl, right? That's only women are doing that. Only girls do that, So we suppress our emotions. So then we cannot fully communicate the way we want to with our partner when we grow up. And then we cannot ask for what we really want. And instead of asking, okay, I have these desires, and instead of asking for them, they come out in different murky and shadowy ways of trying to fulfill them, or maybe manipulating women, or trying to get something from women, or like trying to conquer them just so I can get sex or get attention, female attention, and then I feel good, then I feel happy about myself. And that is all coming from a place of not knowing those things in our mind. So it's a mindset issue there. Like if you can see where our limiting beliefs are when it comes to women, like, oh, women should do this and that, then I'm happy. Women should not do this. And they should always be available for sex. Like if I can't, understand my own sexuality, I can't get an erection by myself, I must have a naked woman in front of me or on the screen, otherwise I cannot get hard. That is an issue. That is a problem. It shouldn't be like that. It just means that we have outsourced our turn on and our sexuality and our, true, authentic sexual expression is outsourced to someone else have to push our button to turn us on, basically. So, mindset is everything. And that's, the starting point with my clients usually, because there's always limiting beliefs when it comes to marriage, relationship, sexuality, and like we said, manhood. Don't cry, don't show emotions. What you should be like a man, what society tells us how we should be as a man, that is limiting us basically in the potential as masculine leaders, but also in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these mindset pieces can be quite very unconscious, especially the way that we may expect our partner to be in relationship. Like, like you said, our partner should always be available for sex, or some men have the mindset, the kind of limiting belief that, as a relationship goes on, the sex dwindles and the woman wants sex less, for instance. And they think that that's just how all relationships are, right? Because that's what they've been told by older men and so forth. And they're not necessarily aware of their own responsibility and how they've kind of created that dynamic in the relationship that causes the sex to kind of dwindle and kind of peter out. I like the phrase peter out. Right? You mentioned leadership in there. And I feel this is a really hot topic in the world of men's work and masculinity around leadership. And I wondered, as your background is, heavily steeped in Tantra, like what is it much different from what we're seeing talked about in terms of, especially in the polarity world, like this masculine leadership, this, that comes from the Tantric traditions?
Yeah. How it is different from the normal leadership? That's your question? Yes. Okay. The big difference here is that you lead with full range of emotions, full range of extremities, meaning that you can go to your extreme masculine pole, but you can also go to your extreme vulnerability. It's not this like, overtly alpha manosphere of just like, I'm only on the right side. I'm only masculine. Like that is not a full-fleshed human being according to Tantra. Like I said, you need polarity. So what we call leaders are integrated men, integrated leaders. They lead with vulnerability, But that doesn't make them weak. It makes them strong because they have full range. They can, reach everyone with their whole humanness intact, And it doesn't mean they crumble or they break apart and they collapse. No. But they just show their humanness and they're not afraid to do that. That requires a lot of lion strength, a lot of masculine holding space for yourself and your own vulnerability. It's almost like, your own inner masculine holds space for your own inner boy, right? And not many people can do that. And people in the Manosphere who are just overtly confident and just running people over with domination, that works for some people. But for me, been doing this work for so long, I see through it. I see through the facade. It might trick the younger generation, and that's quite sad. But in Tantra, we say we need to be integrated. And that means you have to do the deep inner work in your shadow. It's not only about making money and getting into a great physique, because that is all what masculinity is today. Money and muscles, right? And it's not only about that. It's also about your inner work. Like, how deep are you? How strong is your energetic field? Can people feel you when you walk in the room? Right? So it's that presence and consciousness that comes with that power, right?
Got it. And it's this range of leadership I'm hearing is, you talked about crumbling and breaking. And from what I'm hearing you saying, this kind of range of leadership, and we bring our whole self to it, our humanness, our masculine, our feminine, our inner boy even has been nurtured and so forth. We're actually, what reminds me of, it's almost like we become we're flexible, but yet strong, like a tree, like a tree with deep roots. We are able to withstand the wind that will blow us slightly from side to side, but we're deeply rooted and we're deeply grounded. So we hold our structure, we hold our strength in the moment with whatever comes, and also having the capacity to respond to what's really occurring instead of what, say, especially when we talk about the Manosphere or red pill, they're talking a lot about how the playbook you should respond to. If a woman does this, you should do that. If your wife says this, you should do that. But in fact, this kind of widely ranged masculine leadership that you speak of here, it's like responding to what's really in front of us instead of the idea of what is in front of us.
Exactly. It's funny that you bring that up, because I was talking about it the other week, of that you cannot just learn certain techniques and steps of like, this is the playbook, just do step 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And here is your, if your woman say this, answer that. And if she give you A, then you have 2 options to go B and C. And you give this elaborate plan of like, women are like this, so you should behave like this, like a man, and then you're going to have the success. So all of these techniques and tricks, it forces men to be inauthentic. It's literally the opposite way I get men to fully step into their masculinity. And it's so funny, right? Because, then you are trying to apply someone else's ideology to your own life, and it might not fit you. It might not be true for you in your soul, in your heart. And you might always step yourself. You might do things against your own will that you don't really want, but you just do it because other people told you that that is the way to be a man, or that's the right way of having a relationship. And eventually, you're not going to feel good about yourself. You're going to feel like you're breaking your own boundaries. So you have to find what is true for you. And yes, being present in the moment, it's like a skill or like an art of like, just feeling what is right every given moment from a place of intuition and knowing yourself so deeply that you can actually feel the other person, and you know what they need more than they know themselves when maybe your partner is triggered or, out of touch with their core. And that cannot happen if you play someone else's steps and manual. So yes, theory is nice, but we have to start to embody all this information and transformation in our own nervous system, so we can actually handle any situation that is being thrown to us without having to pick out the manual and just follow that, but just play it by ear from your own intuition and wisdom that comes with embodying these tools and not just following someone else's steps.
Yeah, I love that. And you say about wisdom and intuition, and I wonder what your thoughts are on, like, why is it that men, especially in this modern age, feel so distant from their own wisdom, so distant from their own intuition? Women have this more innate ability to kind of feel their intuition and feel wisdom, but as men, we're so divorced from it. So looking for someone else's step-by-step playbook to making $1 million, or step-by-step playbook to having a great relationship or being happy. Like, why do you think that is?
Well, we are in a time right now when men are becoming more feminine in general, and women are becoming more masculine in general. It's just the time of our society. We have evolved into this, and we have been struggling with women's equal rights and all these different social dilemmas, So now we have come to this point where we struggle now with integrating the next dilemma of, like, who are men really, after the Me Too movement and all of that. So I still think that we as a society are trying to figure it out. I think women don't want to be too masculine, and, the boss babes, it's great for them that they can have job and do, everything that we can do. But what I hear and what I feel is that a lot of these women just want to take off the corporate hat and just relax and be women sometimes. And what I feel, we're in a time now when men are softening, and they're a little bit afraid of the social temperament right now, especially post Me Too and post COVID. Men tend to not have a strong voice, be confused of, like, what is okay, or we're still allowed to actually approach women and show that we are sexually interested in them, or is that actually an offense these days? Like, people are confused, and that is startling, and that is a shame. It's sad, right? And so it's just the times we are in, and I think we need to figure out how can we, integrate both men and women and see that men are also suffering. Can we get some more leaders, for young men and men in general that are maybe a little bit more integrated? Right now, there is a vacuum of leadership. So, of course, then when there's a vacuum, someone will fill that. And those with the loudest voice and that are most controversial and have the, strongest confidence, they will fill it until someone else can, right? So I think all these things combined with social temperament, lack of leadership, confusion around masculinity these days, and women trying to find their empowerment, and men maybe feel left out, and we haven't had our revolution yet, and maybe we are still seen as we are privileged, but in many areas we are not, and we're falling behind, basically. That's my long answer to that.
No, it's funny because when you said men haven't had their revolution, I was on a panel talk, talking about sex a few months ago, one of the things I said in there was that men have never had a sexual revolution. You know, women have a very wide range of what we see a woman can be, right? A woman can be a stay-at-home mum. She could be a wife. She can be a doctor. She could be a corporate lawyer. She can be this wide human being, right? But men, we still live in a very narrow tract of what society deems kind of acceptable for us to be. You know, a man who says, "Oh, I'm going to be a stay-at-home father," is still looked down on, not just by men, but also by women as being, you know, quote unquote feminine or weak for doing such a thing. Like as men, we still have this very narrow tract of what a man should be, which is still in many ways quite traditional and not necessarily what is good for us and what's nourishing to us as men. As we've talked about the emotionality, the capacity to feel and express, and we're still almost searching around for that revolution. And sadly, the way that revolution is being packaged at the moment is, like you said, is by the loudest voices, the people who are being most controversial. And I think that's something to do with the times that we live in terms of social media and the way that social media works in comparison to when feminism came through. It was a very different era, different way of disseminating information. And I guess I wonder from your thoughts on, like, what sort of leaders and role models do we need for men and boys especially?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I haven't quite figured it out yet. I been talking about this a lot. We definitely need more spiritual leaders, but usually they tend to not be so attractive to young men or certain types of men, because spiritual leaders might seem a little bit feminine. So I again come back to this answer of the integration, the best of both worlds, so to speak, right? Someone that, have dipped their toes into success and physicality, but also into meditation and their spiritual practice. They heal their shadow as well. Someone that, have a feet in both worlds, like let's say 1 foot in the spiritual world, 1 foot in, success or whatever you want to call that world, the material world, right? I think that could be a good potential of a leader characteristics.
Yeah. And it's interesting. As you say that, like it makes perfect sense. Someone who's really kind of done the work, that they've cleared through some of that emotional baggage that we inherit and so forth, while someone also who can appeal to the very traditional aspects of what men look up to, success in business and money and finance and life. And I guess as you were saying, I was wondering, it's like, we live in the world now where everything is kind of a facade. There's a persona that the world sees of a human being, and in a way, through the way that is, it means that people portray an image of themselves that isn't always true. And because we don't have that like felt experience of like our own intuition and feeling, we sometimes struggle to like connect to the truth of who someone is, like there's been many a celebrity and many a guru who we look up to and we thought was someone we could really trust. And then we've been led to be like, actually that isn't somebody, or, whoever it may be. But it's such a tricky, area, because I see so often, young men, I go into school sometimes and do workshops with young men, and they're really crying out for good role models. And what they ended up with is sportsmen, basically mainly sportsmen and the odd actor. And the people who are maybe speaking some more sense or a bit older, they don't resonate with those young boys, because the issues the young boys are struggling with are usually money and, women and wanting to be successful. And they look to the people who kind of give them kind of back to this blueprint thing. It's like this, who will say, follow my 10 steps to become a millionaire, which is, when I say that, it's like, it's almost quite an immature part of us that craves that, isn't it? That craves this like step-by-step guide to life. So we don't have to think, we don't have to make mistakes, we don't have to struggle.
Yeah. I'm wondering what would you answer that question? What characteristics do you think a leader for men should have today? And who can we nominate?
I agree with you. I agree with a lot of what you said actually around like success and having a level of worldly success, material success. But I think what's really necessary to that success comes out of their kind of cultivation of self, you know, also an honesty as well, an honesty about who they have been, you know, who they've been, the things they've done and how they've moved through that. A spiritual grounding, a compassion and empathy for people and humans and the struggle. I think a huge capacity for empathy and compassion, actually. So much so that even because a person like this is going to be attacked. So having the kind of deep level of self-awareness to meet that attack with compassion and meet that attack with curiosity, to understand the deeper issue of the person attacking them, I think would just start to transform how we view people. Because like, if we look at the leaders we have now, and, you know, for some reason I keep talking about Donald Trump on my podcast, but like, you know, this is a man who, when he's trying to beat his opponent, instead of talking about the important aspects of something like policy or he kind of degrades himself to just name calling. It's like we need leaders who rise to a higher level and look at things from a wider space. But I often wonder if such a person would come to the world and be there, would they be taken down on their way? Not in any sort of conspiracy theory capacity, but just simply the machine that is the media, you know, and the way it functions. It's not, we kind of expect our leaders to be squeaky clean and perfect. And if they have any dent in their armor or their being from the past, we can't just say, okay, they've done that thing, they've atoned for that thing, and they've become a better person out of it. We kind of attach it to their identity forever. You know, there's no redemption often in the world that we live in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Hopefully, we will get a good leader soon.
Yeah, hopefully. I see I do this all the time on the podcast, digress. And I thought we'd circle back round when this stuff was all in the same way, back to like the relationship capacity for men, because this is the area that we're men, you know, we're struggling with. And, you know, men, they don't bring this leadership. What do you see the kind of key aspects to, you know, we talked about mindset. I'd love to talk more about the energy of what a man needs to do, how he has to cultivate his energy to start to bring back that passion into his relationship. I know you touched on, externalizing our desire, our turn on. I'd love you to talk about more about the importance of kind of internalizing our turn on and maybe cultivating kind of our sexual energy to channel that back into our relationship.
Great question. I love it. Yeah, so it starts with taking responsibility of the situation. Instead of playing the blame game of like, she stopped, you know, being interested, she's never initiating sex anymore, you know, she don't want to have as much intimate time or hugging, you know, and like she is doing everything. Stop doing that and just take responsibility of the situation. If you want to just cultivate some of your masculine energy, it doesn't have to be you. She can do it as well. But if you want to cultivate your masculine energy, be the one to say, hey, I take full responsibility of this situation and I'm going to take actions for myself to make changes, right? And so that's the first step. If that step is not there, I cannot really help. You know, someone has to come to the realization like, I want to do something about this, and it's not my partner's fault. You know, of course, there might be, you know, she might be psychopath and, abusing you for sure. But I'm not talking about that, right? So that's the first step. Secondly, is to not be a slave to female sexuality. Most men grow up and become addicted to porn or, run after women their whole life and make that the number one goal after money, or replace it with money later on, right? And that makes us slave. It makes us being sexually bounded. We're not sovereign sexual beings when we do that. And we get manipulated, and we are saying basically, I cannot have sex and I don't know who I am without these things, right? I have to have aid from porn or my woman getting naked and, turning me on. Otherwise, I don't know who I am as a sexual being, right? So it starts with just seeing. We have to unpack what is the connections and the promises that we made to ourselves of like, okay, if I get that woman, if I marry her, and if I sleep with her, I will be happy, right? And she will have sex with me every day for the rest of my life, and I will be in heaven, right? Maybe that's what we're telling ourselves. So we need to get really deep with those underlying belief systems, right? Uncover those and then start to reprogram ourselves and see, who am I as a sexual being if I don't have these external stimuli? And most men, I would tell you, 99%, I don't see any of my clients have ever come into my program and not having to do this work. 99% of men, they don't know who they are as a sexual being. They don't know. They cannot turn themselves on. They always need to use aid or at least fantasy, right? So we need to deprogram them from basically a sex junkie mind of watching porn for years in their childhood, maybe still until adult age on a weekly or monthly basis. So different connections in the brain have been made. They're very, very old, ingrained to have sex on repeat in certain patterns. We have to break those and reprogram and rewire the brain to think differently, and then find, who am I without all of this, without all the noise, and see for the first time in my life, okay, I'm an adult man. I don't even know who I am sexually. Okay, I'm going to try to find it. And what happens? The first thing, frustration. Because we're there naked with a flaccid penis. It's the most, unsexy thing in the world. And we have to go through it. We just have to. And just find, what is my spark inside? What ignites me? How can I start to play with this, Kundalini Shakti, this, female power I have, at the base of my spine? How can I awaken that? Start to feel that in my body and move it around, and actually being very pleasured just by being inside of my body. Start to enjoy my body and be like, wow, I have all this power within. I don't need all of that on the outside. How amazing. So now I fast forward like several months, right? But so it takes all this practice just to get there. And eventually you find, okay, this is my expression sexually, my natural, authentic expression. And from there, go to mastery. Start to feel cosmic orgasms, energy orgasms without ejaculating, merging with your partner, bringing your sexual awareness into the bedroom. And, I kid you not, just a few days ago, my clients are saying, or their partners are saying, like, I don't know what happened to you, but that was the best sex I ever had in my entire life. And I don't know how I can go back to normal sex after this and experiencing this. I just never experienced something like that. 15 orgasms in an hour, making love for 4 hours straight, blissed out for days afterwards. Women saying, I'm addicted to you now. All these things are possible just by us men finding that and not being like, chasing around the house after our women and begging them energetically, right? Begging them like, please have sex with me. And that will make me feel like a man. It make me feel happy, or so we think. And then that made my day. Then I won for the day. And, we're in, out, and it's over. And we got our release, but they're so dissatisfied, right? So that's the path, like a fast forward path, like to that place. And everyone can get there. I read a study here last week. There's no real studies on energy orgasms, but this was, an overview on PubMed of men who can have multiple orgasms without ejaculating. And they said only less than 7% of men over the age of 30 will ever experience that, but that it is possible. So we can get into that range of being one of the 7%, but it requires some work. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It's like learning a new thing. If you want to learn a language, if you want to become a great podcaster or, a sports person, you have to practice. And the same with this. It will take months, but it's so worth it. And the women in your life will be mind blown. And you can start to touch into the classical tantric goals of like merging with your partner, feeling like one, reaching this ecstasy or bliss. Some people call it like oneness or God or whatever you want to call it, just through your lovemaking. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's life-changing.
And it's like when you say that, it's so, I imagine a lot of men hear that and they're like, but that feels so far from where they are, where, because the path there you're describing is learning who your authentic sexual essence is outside of the pool and outside of chasing other women. And I want a question actually for you is along that path, do you recommend that men kind of take a period of maybe kind of celibacy away from obviously porn, but also even interacting with other women as well, as a way to kind of, instead of looking to feed on the energy outside of them, to kind of bring that back in and just be with their own energy and feeling what that is without having a phase where they're not kind of seeking energy from outside?
The no woman diet? Yes. For one bucket of men, I do recommend it. For another bucket of men, no. Because a lot of guys these days are virgins or they don't have enough experience with women and lovemaking, and they didn't have enough sex in their life, and they feel like they're living a life which is very dry, and they don't have the abundance of experience because a lot of, especially the younger generations, are very stifled when it comes to socializing, being around women, and having sex, basically. And so for them, no. I mean, go out there and just play around and, taste different flavors so you can actually start to feel abundant. I think it's important for men to have a phase of feeling like, yes, you can, pick and choose instead of waiting for breadcrumbs. You can go out there and pick and choose. So build up that confidence to you being the one choosing instead of waiting for whatever comes around. And also that you know what you want. If you only had one relationship, you will not exactly know what your needs and wants and desires are. That comes after dating 10, 20, maybe even 30, 40 people. Like you have to go on a lot of dates to figure out, Like, what do I like? Who do I like? What's the qualities? And all that stuff. So men, stop your settling. Start screening. Women are great at this. They screen us all the time. We don't have any screening filters on, but we should. And we should just go on multiple dates. A lot of us should, who are not dating enough or having sex enough, they should do that. But then, yes, you have another bucket of those people who are overusing it and becoming a little bit sexually addicted, or addicted to the chase, or addicted to porn. And so that's another bucket that is common. So if you're in that bucket, yes, a no woman diet of celibacy is a great choice for those guys. So the right remedy for the right people.
Yeah. No. And it's something it's a really great point. I fall into that second bucket. I had to take like a 6-month period where, at the time I was going to a regular Tantra class here in London, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna sleep with any women. I'm not gonna watch any porn. And it was one of those moments I was like, oh wow, what? And like you said, who am I without this desire for feminine energy, from the woman in the bar, or the woman who is serving me my coffee, that little smile, the little bit of flirting that we so effortlessly can do in those moments, and actually pulling that back and just being like, I'm not going to seek that energy. And even if it comes my way, I'm going to hold my boundary of like not engaging. But as you said, there's a lot of men now, especially as you said, the younger generation, I see this with my clients, is men who they have spent their life behind a keyboard, and they haven't learnt those lovely social interactions that can teach them how to interact with women, not even just women. Those same men often really struggle for friendship and being around people. So yeah, it's a really important piece you mentioned there, because it's that knowing what we enjoy. I think this is and you mentioned it, it's a really common thing I see with men. They come to me and I ask them a question like, what sort of woman do you want? And what sort of relationship do you want? And they sit in front of me and they'll give me physical attributes. Like, I want her to look like this, or they give me vague terms. Like, I want it to be easeful. I want it to be fun. And you're like, no, give me the deeper experience you want to have in a relationship. Do you want that relationship to help you grow and evolve and heal your wounds? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I've never thought about it. And then you see why they've had the relationship they've had, because there's no, as you called it, screening. There's no like, what is the relationship I'm looking for? And I see this with men in relationship as well, who have been in long relationships where they've been in a relationship for a really long time, and they've never consciously thought about what I want this relationship to be, and it causes a huge amount of kind of trouble and strife for them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I would always recommend my guys who are in that situation in a relationship to start mapping out, like, what is the unsaid things about our sex life, right? What am I ashamed about when it comes to sex, and something maybe that you don't know? And you will be surprised how many partners, couples, and married couples don't even know that. There was this guy, what was it, 20 years, and they never talked about it. And I had them talk about it, and they were mind blown. They were like, wow, just that conversation took our love life to the next level. Just one conversation, right? So, one aspect is shame. What am I afraid of? What are my fears around sexuality? Am I ashamed of my body, certain positions, or the lights on or off, or all that kind of stuff, right? And another thing is, what is the unsaid desires and lusts? Many people are afraid to admit it, and they will just not express it. And they will just go with a normal routine as usual, right? What they're getting into. So having that conversations of, shame, fears, and desires are so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it comes back down to communication again, isn't it? In the relationship, of like communicating what's there. And I guess communicating isn't just speaking. We often think that it's just speaking, but actually the listening, the ability to listen to our partner. If our partner says to us, I don't know. This used to be something used to come up for me quite often in my relationships. Years ago, I'd meet women and we'd be in a relationship, and I'd be like, "What's your fantasy?" And they'd be like, "I have a rape fantasy," and I'd be like, "Whoa, okay, that's like," I'd have my emotional reaction to that, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay," I'd be curious. But I know a lot of men, if they heard that or certain other fantasies, maybe about being with multiple men or sex outside or whatever it may be, their ability to listen to that is impaired because they don't have the kind of emotional capacity to just be with the uncomfortability they feel while still listening to their partners. And that's one of the things that I see that stops people from communicating, is because they don't want to hear something from their partner that they don't believe they can hold or they can give their partner.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned responsibility before, like this taking responsibility, right? And it's something I've mentioned to many a man, like taking responsibility. And often they're like, yeah, but if I take responsibility, then I'm taking all the blame. What about her responsibility? This, kind of way of being. Like, how do you explain to men why it's important that they take responsibility instead of looking to kind of only take their share, quote unquote, of the responsibility in the relationship for how things are?
Yeah, I never usually explain it a lot. I'm not here to try to convince people that what they should do. So all my clients are usually coming to a point of realizing they have to do something, or, they're going to suffer, or a divorce is going to happen, or, they're going to go another year being single and lonely, or whatever it is. Like the suffering will just continue. They came to a point where they realized, I have to do something about it. I'm the common denominator. So I'm not trying to convince people of saying, oh, you should do this and should do that, Generally, I would say throughout my channels that, yes, it is important to get to that place, but usually my clients already have, so I don't have to convince them. But I just say that as long as you play the blame game, you're going to be disappointed, because no one can make us happy, right? We just have to take responsibility of our own happiness in life. The same goes for our sex life, and if you're pointing the fingers, like I always say, like you're pointing your fingers like this, 3 fingers are pointing back to you, right? So look at those 3 fingers pointing back to you and see, like, okay, maybe you're doing the same thing in different areas of your life. Maybe you're withholding something, or maybe you're not stepping up to the plate in different areas. Maybe you're just explaining yourself. Maybe you attracted that into your life. So just start to take a look at that. But usually those people have not fully come to the realization that they want to do inner work, that they need self-improvement. So I wouldn't bother too much with them. They will still just maybe be on the outskirts of my content and maybe jump in every now and then, dip their toes, but not really fully like following or watching carefully. And that's fine. I think we're all on a different path. We cannot force, our awakening. We cannot force our progress in our evolution and in our development.
Yeah. And that, what you said there, kind of triggers a question I'm often asked, and I wonder if it's a question you're asked by women. And the question I commonly get asked, which happened a lot recently actually, is like, how do I get my partner to do the work? I'm in a relationship with a man, and it's a completely different segue. I'm in a relationship with a man, and I can, she's saying she can see the relationship could be so amazing if he just looked at some of his childhood wounds and his fears and the way he communicates and maybe his attachment style and stuff like this. And I wondered, what is your advice or suggestions to women or people, because it happens to men as well. I've got male clients who have the same issue when this is so in their relationships.
I say don't do it. Don't make them. Don't try to make them, work on themselves. If you're trying to do that, you're probably miserable already and you're not happy and you're trying to change who they are. And it's not going to work. That's just a failed path altogether. So I'm all about forget about what they're doing. Just accept the shit out of them. Everything that they're doing and not doing, everything that triggers you, just accept it all. Take full responsibility. It only takes one person to fix the relationship. It only takes one person stepping up to avoid the divorce courts. I see that again and again. If the woman wants to do that, fine, she can. For me, it's the men, right? They want to step into those shoes, those bigger shoes, and just being the masculine for once and be the masculine pole to her feminine, forcing her into her feminine pole. That is possible. So I don't adhere to this, like we need to go to couples counseling and my partner needs to be on board. I need to convince them to do it. Well, it might be too late until you convince them. They might not want to go, right? So what are you going to do then? Be miserable, wanting them to change? Yeah, that's my approach. I know it's controversial, but that's just what I see. And then
Yeah. No. It's you can't force someone to do something they don't want to do, and they don't see that it's there for them. One of my suggestions is even more controversial. Mine is leave. Mine is just straight leave, and not be attached to
them. You should leave. Yes.
Yeah. If you have to be less attached. If you have to be less attached to the relationship than you are to them doing the work. Because in my experience, what I've seen in a lot of men is that when a partner they really loved left them, it was the biggest trigger for them to like, oh shit, I need to do something about how I'm being because I'm fed up of this pattern reoccurring. But when we're attached to this person being our partner and them doing the work, then we're in a problem because, like you said, then we have to accept and do our own work and be an example or create the happiness inside, which can be a tricky route to take.
100%.
Yeah. I think it's a good place to finish up. We've really weaved and danced through a lot of different topics here. And yeah, man, I'd love you to a big thank you for the conversation, this weaving conversation for everything from like how we can do role models, reigniting passion, how men can kind of step into their power. And I'm sure the listeners are really dying to know where they can listen to more of you, where they can find you to work with you as well.
The best place to find me is on my website. It's called tantricacademy.com, tantric with a C. There you can sign up for a lot of free resources. I have 2 masterclasses, one for single men, one for partnered men. I have audio downloads, semen retention downloads. You can sign up for my introductory course for just $27. There's a lot of stuff going on my website, and a whole archive of over 200 articles, on topics that we discussed today. And, not just AI articles, but this is my knowledge, expressed in this article. And that's all for free on my website. So tantricacademy.com. You can also find me on YouTube, Steffo Shambo, Instagram, same. So those are my channels. So thanks, David. I appreciate it and what you're doing.
Cheers, man. And just to finish up, listeners, if this has been an episode that you've enjoyed, share it with somebody, because there's going to be someone in your life, there's a man in your life who who also could do with listening to this to, understand how they can bring passion back to relationships, step into their own power, or even how they can become the sort of role model just in the community they're in. I know we talked about role models, but that's something we can bring to our communities, not just the wider world. But I will let you get on with your day and say ciao, ciao.
I want to say a big thank you for listening. It's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world. especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them, share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if, you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at @theauthenticman_, or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.